Hey YouTube, we are back with the XC70 and I have an oil leak on the front of the engine on the block, up above where the oil dipstick returns into the pan, or the side of the block to get to the pan. Yep, and it looks like, sticking my flashlight up there, it looks like the oil breather box is wet on the driver's side about halfway up. So there's a couple lines that go to the block there. There's an elbow, like a rubber elbow that sits in there somehow, if I remember right. So something is not on tight or is ripped or cracked or something. I replaced this PCV system, the entire thing, about 2 years ago, I think. There's videos on that. So, yeah, there's not an easy way to get to that box. There's just no way around it. This is not going to be fun. So, looking at the front of the engine, this is our intake. This is the turbo bazooka. So the intake air is coming from the turbo under pressure across to go into the intercooler and cool down. It comes out this side of the intercooler, goes underneath this intake into a throttle body, about where my hand's sitting, under this bulb here. The throttle body comes up, puts the air into here. The injectors are sitting here under this rail, pointing in. They actually mount into the top. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 air inlets, and there's right where they go into the block is a fuel injector into the air intake. So to get to see this box, I pretty much got to get rid of a boost bazooka, get rid of this air intake, probably take the air box off so I can get just more space. I can look in there from the side with my flashlight. Going to take this bottom air intake tube off. Might have to remove the throttle body. I really don't want to take the intake off if I don't have to on this, because I really think it's just the hoses or connectors on this side of that breather box. It's sitting maybe 8 inches below where my hand is sitting. And there's no easy way to get to it. Probably the fan shroud might have to come out too, just so I can get more space to do things through here. Because right now I can't even get my hand, I can't even touch the breather box. Can't get an angle to do it. From the bottom, there's no space. From the top, there's no space. It's just sitting in a very, very unfortunate position. All right, so I found the crankcase breather system on the XC70 in Vita. That's the box. That's the oil trap box. And about halfway up on this side is oily. And there's a hose that comes off and goes to the block. There's also this thing that's on the bottom, if I remember right. It's like a little rubber grommet that goes into the block where the oil returns in. So, but there's 2 places that do it. I don't know why there's 2, but there are. So I have a feeling it's this hose right on this mounting on this side that is leaking. It's either popped off or cracked or ripped or something. It could be this bottom grommet, but the box was wet about halfway up. So I don't think it's this bottom grommet that feeds into the block directly. I think it's this one. So I got to get to it. Oh my God. I just found on Vita, it says how to clean the crankcase ventilation system. It says to remove the power steering pump, remove the alternator, and go in this direction. That sounds absolutely horrible. Can't imagine all of that work. I didn't remove all of that to actually put the breather system on, but I did remove the intake completely. I'm trying to avoid that because there's a manifold gasket in there. What I did do is I removed the breather box. I don't know about you guys, but these mass airflow sensors, they do not want to come off this hard plastic intake tube. So it's easier for me just to pull the 2 Torx that go into the box. I don't know if that's what you guys do, but that's how I do it, because it feels like I'm going to break something. Pulled the vacuum lines off. There's a vacuum nozzle here that goes to the turbo control valve. And then this is the main. These 2 go into the main, all this vacuum system here, running to the brake booster. And then I got my intake line coming from the intercooler. So this is the hot air comes over the top of the bazooka's off. So the bazooka comes across the top, goes into the intercooler around the back. And this is the intake going to the throttle body back in there. So I have a breather box back in there. All right, YouTube, so I'm trying to cheat. I put a light down in there. You can just see the breather box. It is right in there. That all the way that's lit up, that is the breather box. And you can see it is oily down at the bottom. So that hose is where the shiny, see if I can find it in your view. There's a shiny right in here. That area is where that hose mounts. It does not look to be leaking from the hose. It looks to be leaking from down. Let's see if I can find my finger. See my finger moving? Down in that direction at the bottom. There it is, down in there. That is where the grommet, so at the bottom of the breather box is a little male protrusion that goes into a rubber grommet into the block. That appears to be the issue because it's all oily below that. That's where it's at. So it's at the bottom of the box. Something has gone wrong with that grommet, which means I pretty much need to get that grommet. There's no way that box is full and plugged. There's no freaking chance. Something happened with that grommet. Ugh. That means I gotta take the box off completely, which means the intake's gotta get out of the way. I'm not looking forward to this. This is gonna be a bigger project than I ever was hoping for. Yuck. All right, let's get this out of the way. Ooh, just a wee bit of oil blow by. That's where it comes out of the intercooler. I mean, it's normal to have some, but I mean, that was more than what I was anticipating, but who knows, that could have been, you know, sitting there for 2 years, just gradually building up with nowhere to go. Yeah, it's not so oily on this side. A little bit. It's definitely going to have oil blow by. I mean, that's the way the system works. From the turbo, they are not perfect. Yuck. All right, YouTube, I'm trying to get you a look at this. I'm going to point. That's the hose coming out of the upper part of the breather box. You can see the oil line right there on the lower part of the breather box. I'm not sure that the oil is all coming from down there where that grommet goes back in at the bottom of the box into the block. Down in, where's that at? It's not really lit up very well. Oh, it's on the back. It's down in here because it's oily on this block higher than that. This is that hose. I thought it would be coming from here, but it appears to be coming from up there where that hose makes the elbow turn and goes into the block, because all of this is oily. And drifting down as it could just be air. Oh, you know what? I have the air guides on the bottom of the engine. It could just be air coming back up and blowing this against the box. Very possible. All right, I'm gonna move my light there, but you can kind of see where I'm at. I think now I'm gonna, so I can get more access, I'm going to, upside down and backwards, let me get this light out of the way. This is my throttle body. I'm gonna disconnect the throttle body and pull that off so I can get more access. I'll probably have to pull the fan shroud just so I can get in this way and get all the connectors off of that breather box without having to remove this intake. I don't want to touch the intake or the banjo bolt. This is all part of the PCV system as well, going back around to the intake. Don't want to mess. This is a coolant line, and then there's a line, can't remember where it's at, but there is another line that goes all the way. That one goes to a hose, and there's another one that goes all the way to the intake back there somewhere. Don't remember how they all work, but I'm about ready to remember it as I start diving deeper and deeper into it. You know, in one of my 2-year ago videos complaining about the throttle body bolts upside down and backwards, I just remembered someone commented you can get to those 4 bolts on the throttle body easier from the bottom coming up and looking straight at them. Sure enough, that's what I'm going to do. So the oil dipstick just mounts by 1 bolt right here. Somebody asked me about that the other day. So that's the bolt. It was an 8mm on this car, and the dipstick tube runs down through between the alternator and the throttle body control system here, and the power steering line just goes right through that gap and goes in with a special O-ring into the side of the block. So I just pulled that out, nice and easy. I'll replace that O-ring when it goes back together. But now I should have access from that gap down there where you can see car floor or garage floor down in there. See where my finger's wiggling around? You can just see the garage floor. I can get up through there with my super duper, as long as I can make it extension. That's all 3 of them that I have. With a 10mm, I should be able to pop all 4 of those bolts and loosen up that throttle body. Hey YouTube, we're gonna interrupt today's video production for a brief moment from one of our first initial sponsors on Jamie Cars. That's right, today's sponsor is my wallet. Everything you see here, paid for out of my pocket. A limited box of tools, haphazardly collected from Lowe's, Harbor Freight. I think I got this one out of a junkyard car. Limited space in a regular garage with very limited storage. Piss poor lighting that hums. No heat in the winter and no AC in the summer. No lift, just some ramps from AutoZone. And there is definitely no bin pack car lift rack sitting back there with a Bugatti or other exotics on it. If we're gonna be fully honest, it's actually sponsored by my empty wallet. So do me a favor, jump down there. There's a subscribe button. Hit that thing. 80% of you on this channel are brand new. I'm killing it making these videos. Auto repairtainment. If I can do it, you can do it. That's the message of this. Jump down there, hit subscribe, help a guy out. Come on, let's monetize this. Come on, I trust you. It just takes a second, right there. Hit subscribe. All right, just quickly, just get the fan shroud out of the way. It's 2 8mm bolts on the top, 1 clip, some zip ties. Boom, it comes out, it lifts out. These, on this car, there's tons of room for these cables. This is the main line coming across that runs the actual electric motor on the fan. It tucks out of the way. This one actually has so much space that can actually come out behind it. Electrical lines, connectors, I don't know what those are all for. Lights, who knows, fog lights, whatever. But anyway, now I can get to the throttle body in here with a wrench. And when I get that throttle body out of the way, I can see directly into my breather box. Yeah, all right, so I gave up on from the bottom. Too awkward to get all the way up in there with a swivel on 2 of the bolts. I can only get to 2 of them cleanly. My throttle body's sitting right there in the bottom. I just set it down there because the clip didn't really want to come out apart, and I don't really need to unclip it. I just need it out of the way. So now you can see my oily mess down there. That open hole, that's where my dipstick goes into the oil pan. It's oily above that, so that's not the issue. I'm going to drop you down in here. I'm going to try to look at what you're looking at. This is better than a mirror. Let's orient myself. Dipstick goes in down there somewhere. It's kind of blocked from the view. But then we can see it's oily, oily. There's this, that's the right there, that's where the grommet goes back into the block on the bottom of the oil box. But up here on that elbow hose, that's where it seems to be oily from. So where that hose right there, it's like a round elbow, so it comes out of the box, there's a clamp, and then it goes into the block with another clamp. That's where it is leaky, right above, right all there. It's all coming down from that spot. So let's see if we can get it out. I don't really want to take the intake off. I'm hoping I can get to all my connectors. All right, YouTube, so I was able to get in there and undo with a little flexi 8mm ratcheting wrench. Get this off because it's sitting right against the block. So I had to reach in there with a wrench to get it. Could barely see it through some gaps through here, lighten it up from the bottom. And got this one off of the breather box and was able to pry it out. It doesn't look cracked or leaking. I'll probably order a new one just to be safe. But why is it creamy looking inside? Is that just gas deposits that are in the, frothy or something like that? Don't know. But when I went to undo this one wasn't tight. I was expecting it to, give it a little pop to get it to start undoing, and it just started unscrewing. So I'm kind of curious if just through 2 years of heat cycles, cold air, warm air, hot air, heating up, full heat, total cold in the winter, if this worm gear just loosens itself up. And that's the only reason it was leaking, because it seemed to be leaking from this thing, and I don't see any cracks. I'm going to clean it up and see if I can find anything. But I'll probably just order a new one of these and re-clamp this thing on there. All right, YouTube, so I'm trying to figure out what's been going on here. So it sits in there in this orientation. My hand is where the oil breather box, the oil separator box is sitting, the oil trap. And this is the upper return, and then there's a lower return that's going into the block as well. So this is the upper one. It sits like that, and it appears to have been leaking from this bottom area. And look at this. See how there's a ridge? This thing's actually kind of deformed. You can kind of see it back there. Do you see that? That is not the right shape, as this is nice and flat. It's got a groove here for some reason, a pinch, and it has a lip, until I flip it over, and there's no lip. So on this bottom side, it's just, was it deformed when I put it on? Did I deform it? You can see where the oil worm clamp was sitting. It's just not, it's not folded. I wonder if this thing was deformed or just wore away. But it's been leaking right out the bottom, just pouring that oil out on the front of the block. Sitting like that and leaking out this bottom part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to order one of these. I'm going to order a throttle body gasket, because every time you pull those off, you should redo it. And I need a new O-ring for my oil dipstick. And I think we can go back together. And that should be it. I see no signs of any other oil leaking except for that hose where it went into the upper part of the block. So quick order from FCP Euro, and I should be good to go. I take it back. I'm going to order 2 throttle body gaskets because I forgot when I did this a couple years ago, I put a phenolic throttle body spacer on there. So it has a gasket on the top and the bottom of it, sandwiches it. And you can see as I was pulling it off, I forgot this was still stuck up there. It wouldn't come off. It was just coming off in pieces. And then I looked underneath with the flashlight and saw, oh yeah, the phenolic throttle body spacer. So I got in there and popped the whole thing off. So I need 2, one on the top, one on the bottom. One of these. And an oil ring for the dipstick tube, or O-ring for the dipstick tube, and this is going to go back together. Yeah. Maybe I got to take the entire oil box off. I'm going to look on Vita, but that's good enough for now. I can start ordering some parts. Well, just a quick shout out to Richard in YouTube land. I think you're right, Richard. Richard commented on my prior video this video hasn't come out yet, but that other video just came out yesterday on the power steering clips when I discovered that this car was leaking oil more than normal, or was leaking oil underneath. He suggested that I look at the oil pressure sensor because those go bad and they will slowly leak and then they will leak a lot. And I think that might be what's going on. I even went back to 2 years ago when I replaced the PCV system on this car, and you could see that whole area was oily. And if you remember back, if you go back and watch those videos, my PCV system was held together with zip ties instead of clamps on the hoses. So whoever had done that, thank you very much, but they are fixed now with clamps, even though that one wasn't very tight. So today, it's a $33 part from FCP Euro. I ordered a new oil pressure sensor that goes on the block. We're going to remove this one today. I also ordered the elbow and the grommet for the return lines, or the up, the crank breather line that goes into the upper side of the box, and then the return grommet that goes into the bottom of the box that goes into the crankcase to return oil. I'm going to pull the box off completely today because I'm just kind of curious. I want to make sure that that channel that returns oil into the block or into the sump is not clogged. So I just want to, since I'm here, take care of that, and I don't want to be back here again. So we're going to replace that oil pressure sensor, make sure that channel's cleared up. The PCV is fine, but let's just take the time while we're here because I do have some access. I did not remove the intake. I don't want to remove the intake. If I can get away in the rest of my life on this XC70 never removing that intake, I will be very happy, and add that to the list of things I don't want to do is underneath the intake looking at the oil breather oil trap box ever again. So let's just take care of it now. All right, there is my oil pressure sensor, that dead center in the middle of your screen that's all oily with a big, I think it's a 24 millimeter head on it that just goes directly into the side of the block on the lower part of the block here. So that is, yeah, that is oily. And I just don't know if it's leaking from up above, up here with the box where the return lines were, because that elbow hose definitely had an issue, or if it's just spraying out of here. Most likely, maybe it was a little bit of both. But it's definitely gotten worse than it was last time because that's all very wet. I bet Richard's correct, and it's that sensor. I bet it's that. So let's get that thing out of there. And you know what? I'm also going to seal up this little electrical line right here because that has pulled itself apart. And we'll tape that shut and get it sealed shut. Move forward, but let's get that off. All right, YouTube, I have my oil trap box out. It sits like that. Through those holes, there are 2, one on the bottom left, one on the mid right, 10 millimeter bolts that hold to the block. And then right here is the male grommet that inserts into the side of the block to return the oil back to the engine. And you can tell it is not clogged whatsoever. There were just up here, all I had to do is the PCV system is still in place. I just disconnected the 2 8 millimeter, in this case on the rebuild kit from 2 years ago. There are 2 8 millimeter worm clamps that were sitting on here. Just loosened those up and popped it off. Piece of cake. So hopefully I can get that back together when we need to go back on. It is not clogged up. It's not full of oil. Good news. Then when we look down here, let me get a light. Positive that return right there, dead center in your screen, that's where the grommet goes back in to return oil to the engine. It is not going to be clogged. I'm going to stick, I think it was an electrical cord that I used. I'm going to stick that down in there and make sure that it has a free passage all the way down to the block, or to the bottom of the sump is where it goes. It just inserts right there into a channel that just runs down along the front. It's a little square channel that runs down the front of the block all the way into the oil sump. So I'm going to make sure that we can get that in there with no blockages. I'm positive it's not blocked up. It shouldn't be. I've done oil changes every 3,500 miles. We're going to pull out that, I disconnected the electrical connector from the oil pressure sensor, and I'm going to pull that out right now. All right, so it took me a while to find it, but I found my old section of electrical cord, replacement electrical cord from the hardware store. It's like a, I don't know, foot long, maybe 15 inches long. And you just feed it into that line right there where the oil trap box returns oil back to the block. And it runs down along the front of the block on the intermediate section to the oil pan. And I did, after a couple tries, get it to go all the way in there, and it did not have all the blockage gunk on it like it did when I did the PCV box, so it is still good. And when I pull it out, it has oil on the bottom of it because the engine is full of oil. So it's going all the way down into the oil sump. So we are good. I'm going to pull that back out. We're going to clean this up. I'll plug these holes, clean that up, and wait for my parts to get here and put it back together. Should be nice and easy, right? Let me hear. I'll see. Let's see if this thing will get the light out of the way. I'll keep this here. I'll reach in here and I'll pull this out. There's my section. So I'll set it down. That's how long it is. It's about a foot long. And you can see it's all oily on the bottom. It is not covered in carbon deposits. So we are good. It is draining back to the block. So I'll clean this up, put some plugs in there, do some degrease on the front of the block again. And when my parts get here, we'll put it back together. It should be nice and easy. I did take a look. I kind of, looking at this oil pressure sensor, I don't see any obvious cracks. I wouldn't be surprised that it was leaking, if that's a common thing that happens, thanks to Richard. But for 35 bucks, $32, something like that, I'm happy to replace it while I'm here because I don't really want to be back in there again. Let's put it back together once and be done with it. All right, YouTube, I'm going to drop you down in there. Clean things as good as I'm going to get them for now. Not as good as they were last time I did the entire PCV because I had the intake out of the way and it's a lot easier to clean. I just kind of superficially cleaned it, stuck my oil dipstick tube back in there to seal that out for a little bit. Obviously that's coming back out. But as soon as I get a big brown truck showing up with a bunch of parts from FCP Euro, it all goes back together. All right, YouTube, so that is the oil pressure sensor. It's oily, definitely. I think if I had to make a guess that it was probably this, although I go out and look at it in good sunlight and I don't see any obvious signs of a crack. I do know that they can fail internally and just mist oil out, and then it would probably blow around. Here's the brand new one from FCP Euro, and I do see that it has a washer, and this one does not. I don't know, that washer, it doesn't seem to go past the threads. I bet if it spins it does. I need to check and see. It's probably still stuck to the block down there. I'll see if I can pry it off. But maybe that's it. I've never taken this off the car before. When I did the PCV system, I didn't touch this. I'm kind of suspecting that I went back and looked at my old PCV system video on this car from 2 years ago, November of 23. And that oil breather box is covered in oil on this side, just like it is today. So I kind of wonder if this thing was always the culprit. So who knows? We'll get it replaced with some better stuff. I got that new hose because this one, remember the other one has a crimp on the edge, on the bottom edge right there, where it just didn't have a lip quite right. So we'll get this fixed up. So I've always wondered, how does this breather box PCV system work? Like, what are all of these lines? And I did find this photograph right up there on Matthew's Volvo site. And maybe I'll put a link to that in the description down below. But you can see, like a normal PCV, positive crank ventilation coming off the top of the valve cover on this car. This line comes up, goes down, and goes into, I believe, here. Goes into the big one, I believe. I might have these backwards, but it goes into this one. So that's the crank gases that are escaping off the top of the pistons into the valve cover, and then they're going into here to get out. And then this one is coming off the side of the block, so it is also for gases coming off the side of the pistons on the side of the block that they can get into the box as well. And then, so this is really meant just to separate oil from the engine vapors. The engine vapors are going to leave via this one and go back to the engine to be fired through the intake. Gets a little complicated. And then down here, once the oil is separated, so it's got channels up in here, so the air has to move and the oil's going to separate out of it, and the oil's going to slowly drip back into the sump through this channel here, going back into the engine. But on this one, remember, this car is, what makes this a little bit complicated is this car has a turbocharger. The boost bazooka is obviously off. So when the air comes out of here to get back to the intake, if the turbo is not creating pressure, so it's operating under regular vacuum, it can just get sucked out of here and go right into a banjo, through a banjo bolt into the intake right here. But the problem comes when the turbo kicks in and starts putting pressure into this, vacuum is gone, and you don't want high pressure air from here shooting back into the system and pressurizing this oil trap. So in the banjo bolt is a little needle, little ball that just goes back and forth. So when it builds pressure, the ball locks, air doesn't go back this way. When that happens, air goes the other way and works its way through this tube system all the way back to the intake. So there's coolant in here and there's air. Actually, I'm not sure on this car. On my other car, it had two. It's coming through this vacuum system somehow and going all the way back. How does that get to the intake? This is slightly different than the V70. I'm not sure how it's getting there. On the V70, this was a double line right here. This is the, oh, it's inside of it. This is a hollow tube. It's got coolant line in there and the air line. So it has an air line for when a turbo is under boost, the air gets sucked this way under a vacuum and goes into the intake before the turbo gets pressurized and sent back in. So we can get rid of the vapors under vacuum, normal operation, or turbo boost, going back that way via vacuum. So it has two directions to flow, and then it also has coolant running through here, coming off of the thermostat and then returning to the block over here inside this tube to keep it from, just to keep it at high temperature or engine temperature, so it never, you're not getting a whole bunch of cool air coming back into the system. Or keep the vapors moving, the oil-laden vapors moving, but most of your oil should have come out in the box. My convoluted explanation, hopefully that helps. If not, blast me in the comments below, but let's put this back together. I'm tired of talking. All right, YouTube, well, after picking around down there on the machined face to see if it had a washer stuck to it, it does not, just has a machined face. That washer is missing on my oil pressure sensor. Yep, that's the problem. I didn't have a seal, and I know it didn't fall. I'll look around down in there with the flashlight just to make sure, but I'm pretty sure that's the problem. It's been leaking from here the whole time, probably the whole time we've owned this car. All right, so my strategy on this is I've got the breather box set up with a new lower seal, the little grommet that goes into for the oil return to the block, and I have a new, with a good lip on the bottom, hose. This is a $100 hose, right? This little section. But with this such of a tight fit, the probability of me getting the bolted on first, or the box bolted on first, and then getting this into place, I think is next to zero, with the especially with the intake here. So I thought my best chance was to take the box off, and then mount it to here, and then push this onto the block. And then I'm hoping that if this one's oriented and this one's oriented and that bolt lines up, then this blind bolt back here, when I'm putting this back on, will line up automatically, and I can just put the bolt in blind and bolt it to the block. Let's find out if my strategy works. All right, YouTube, I've got it sitting in there, and I got the oil pressure sensor is back in place. I've got it pressed in on the grommet. I got one bolt on this side, and I got the upper one in. Nothing is tight on the worm clamps yet. They're just sitting in place. I haven't even done the top clamps for the gases to come out the top of the breather box. What are the chances I can blindly feed in through that gap down here into the backside, lower backside of that, and line up perfect with the hole and have it thread? I'm hoping it's really good, because that's how I did it last time, I'm pretty sure. Just blind luck. All right, YouTube, I think I got lucky. It mounted up. I could just get back in there. I don't know if I showed you this. I did have to pull the line off the back of the alternator to get some space with this harness away, so that my shaft of my wrench can go right through that space. That harness is sitting in the way otherwise. So that did work out. All right, let's make some more progress. What's next? All right, there has been more progress. I gotta be honest though, it might be easier just to take the intake off. So I still got one more hose to connect on the top there where it comes across from the top of the valve cover into the oil trap box. But just to give you an update, to get that hose, the vacuum suction hose or the intake hose where it comes off the top of the box to go back into the burning the combustion chambers, to get that hose to go on there with that worm clamp, I had to remove the knock sensor. And then to get the knock sensor back on, it's blocked by the hose. So it's, you know, 6 one way, half a dozen the other, which is easier upside down. And getting in here with barely any visibility and tool access was not fun. I got one more clamp to put on the top, and then we can start reassembling. I don't know if I'd do it this way next time. Probably just take the intake off is way easier. All right, more fun working upside down in really tight spaces. Time to recreate the phenolic throttle body spacer with sandwich with 2 new throttle with through throttle body gaskets. 2 of those. They sit right here as a sandwich. Mounts upside down by 4 bolts. Goes in upside down on the bottom of the intake that you can't see what you're doing. Fun, fun. All right, we've made progress. Throttle body is back on there with the 4 bolts and the sandwich of the phenolic throttle body spacer and the 2 gaskets, one on top, one below, creating a sandwich. Not easy to do, hard to get to. Everything's in the way. Can't even get a torque wrench in there, so they're pretty much just Jamie 10 Newton meters. So now I got my air inlet tube returning from the intercooler. It's coming in from right here. Comes across, goes into the bottom of the throttle body. Just got to tighten up some hose clamps on that thing and we can start plugging and chugging. It feels like we're getting closer. Maybe. All right, intake line is tight. I got the vacuum line sitting back in place. I need to drop the radiator fan shroud back in there and then get my boost bazooka reconnected and start tightening up some lines. And just like that, all my easily accessible upside down and backward space is filling right back up. Let's see if I can reinstall my bazooka tube. Sits in there kind of like that. Got to get down to the intake, or the, it's got to go down through. I'm gonna have to worm that in somehow. I don't know how I got it out. We'll get it in there. Oh, there it is. There it is. It goes in like that. Sits across the top. More fun. All right, YouTube, just to catch you up, boost bazooka's back in place. I got the oil dipstick back in place. The dipstick is sitting in the tube. This is all reconnected. I need to do some zip ties here to fix that a little bit. Got my mass airflow sensor reconnected. Everything's back where it's supposed to be, bolted down, should be good. I say we start it up, see if we get any error messages. Let's find out if we messed anything up. All I got left to do is the air box and the little snorkel. Hey, I'm not a complete idiot. It runs. And no messages. 202,538 miles. You can hear it sucking some air. All right. That is the best news I've had all day. Now if it doesn't leak oil at the bottom, that would be even better. Now what I'm going to do though, even though it's only got like maybe 1,000 miles on it, we are going to change that oil because I'm not 100% sure that I got everything blocked off. I sprayed the front with degreaser. Just in case any got into the oil block, we're just going to dump it, put new oil in there. All right, airbox is back on, everything's reconnected. I just got to run my turbo control valve or whatever it's called. TCV, I think that's what it is. It just sits in here. Yeah, I gotta figure out how that sits. There it is. Clips in, gets those hoses off the transmission. That's it. Everything's on. I just need to make sure that my cooling fan is kicking in. And it is not. Are we up to temp yet? It's been idling for a little bit with the oil change. We're getting there. Not quite up to temp yet. So, gonna let this thing go and see if that kicks in. We'll pull it off the ramps and take it for a drive. Well, YouTube, it's all back together. I did get the fan, the cooling fan to kick in. It's just not hot enough driving around here. I plugged in a little OBD2 reader while I was driving one of the little cheapies. And it was only driving up the road. It was sitting at idle at like 97 degrees Celsius. Driving up the road, it dropped to like 85 instantly, just cool air outside. So it wasn't needing to kick on because according to Google AI, it doesn't turn on until about 102 degrees Celsius. So to get it to kick on automatically all the time, I hit the AC and maxed it out, jumped out of the car, and sure enough, put my hand in there. Fan shroud was blowing away. So yeah, it's working just fine. It just wasn't cold enough for it to kick. It wasn't hot enough for the engine to require it. So it's all back together. I don't know if doing it with the intake manifold in place, getting to that oil trap box and all the hoses under there, it was rather cumbersome. I don't know if I'd recommend it, but as a proof of concept, it can be done. Saved myself a little bit of time not having to deal with an intake manifold gasket. Yeah. Or possibly when you do the intake manifold, there's a higher risk that you're going to break that little plastic PCV line that runs up to that banjo bolt right here under the intake manifold, right there. Those get brittle, and if you wiggle them too much, snap, and you're having to buy the entire PCV line, or at least that segment. And yeah, so I was able to do it without messing that up. So proof of concept, it can be done. The car's good. It's heading back to campus. We'll see it again in 3 weeks for winter break and see if there's any more oil leak underneath. Crossing my finger there's not. So, if I can do it, you can do it. Be safe out there, YouTube. Have fun.